We had to submit samples. I don't believe I mentioned that, but we had to submit samples for Art Center to get into the school, and I had very little training, and I did some samples and some artwork, and Hector submitted samples, and we submitted them, and on a weekend, I believe it was like a Friday or Saturday, my brother Hector had gotten a message, a letter saying that he had been accepted for first semester student at Art Center. And and my dad, see, I knew you'd get in, you just didn't have it to do it. Well, I didn't have any art in high school. I was majoring in the wrong thing that I didn't like, into bookkeeping and business law and all that stuff. Hector was in the publicity department and the art. And then so on the following Monday, I got a letter from Art Center that I had been accepted as second semester student. And so I showed it to my dad. See, Dad, here it is. Look, I made it. So I was very fortunate, and I told the Art Center that I wanted to go and start at the beginning, because I really didn't have the experience. I just had some samples that looked pretty good to them. So it was interesting. We couldn't get into Art Center, so we had the GI Bill, so we decided to go to LA City College and take up some courses there and some art there. And we took the advertising classes that they had there, and just to fill in. And then when the time came, we were accepted and went to Art Center and started all my art classes there. It was supposed to have gone like 8 semesters, 2 for 4 years, and we were going 3 semesters a year. So we graduated from Art Center school. When we got out of school, we went to, my brother Hector went to Hollywood and was looking for a job with our samples that we had. And I went looking at other places also, couldn't find work at that time. And, being out of school, you're not really a pro of any kind, they're just school samples. And he got into working at a studio with Fred Kopp, was the name of the studio in Hollywood Boulevard, just off of Vine. And I went into Hollywood also one time, and went further west, and went to a studio that was located there, and they were doing ads for Universal Studios at that time. And they took me in, and I started as an apprentice there, was making very little money. And Hector was located about 4 to 5 blocks away, and we used to get together. We used to take our lunches because we didn't have the money, and we would go to take together. And then eventually a guy in the studio broke away from the studio that I was working. Contempo was the name of the studio, and started, Dick Mitchell was his name, and started on Cahuenga, very close to Universal Studios, doing the ads. And that's what I was doing also there at the studio for Universal Studios. So we would then go to Universal Studios and talk to the art director there to get information on doing ads for for a movie, which would be a 1 column or 2 column. 1 column is a 1 column ad, 2 column, a quarter page, a full page ad. And so we'd have to do these ads and get them approved and so forth. So at one point, the guy that was head of that studio merged with Fred Kopp, where Hector was. And so then I went to work at the same studio with Hector. So I was sitting right behind Hector on a drawing board doing the stuff. And then I started doing the things for the Universal Studios. and all these ads, and so I was in charge of doing them. And I remember that I did the ads, and all of us, they were all accepted with 3 changes on the whole thing. They wanted to make a line bigger or make it all caps and so forth like that. Just 3 changes, and I did them, and God, everybody said that was great. And the owner, Fred Kopp, didn't say a word to me. He didn't say thank you or give me a bonus or nothing. I mean, no recognition. So I figured it's time for me to get out of there. So eventually I left there. And I left there by the way of that they were making some Rexall Corporation, which was located on La Cienega and Beverly Boulevard. The OWL headquarters there was located there, and they needed they were going to have a package designed for a ointment for a pain reliever and that type of thing for the muscles in an arm. And so they tried agency, the advertising agency that was doing, designers were doing that. And so I worked on weekends doing a package to try to just submit it on my own, which I did, and they picked my package over all the other ones that they had. And I ended up working there at Rexall Corporation as assistant to the art director, which I knew very well, and so I was as an assistant there. At a later point, then I became the art director there at the Rexall Corporation, and they put me on as an executive on there, and I just got whatever my pay was, but I was working early in the morning, and then late at night everybody would leave, and I was getting the artwork done to come in for the next day and everything. So I was putting a lot of extra hours. So then I told my boss, I want to go back to regular, and I'll turn in my overtime for it. So they took me off of the executive job of doing that. So which financially was a little bit better, but. I remember that we had to make, I did some signs and birthday cards for some of the guys that worked there. They wanted a card made up, so I'd make a big birthday card for them. And they wanted a birthday card for the secretary of Justin Dart, who was head of the company, the overall Rexall Corporation. He was married to Mary Bryant, an actress, and he was very close with the Republican group and parties. He played football at Minnesota at one time, and so they were going to have a cocktail party up at in his office. They had a great big conference room that was, the table was probably 18 or 20 feet. Oval shaped thing, great big huge. They had to bring it in parts and put it together there, and he had all the guys there, and I was still working on it. Some guy came out, come on, they're waiting for the thing. So I took it in there, and I went without my coat and a jacket on everybody was all dressed up. We always wore ties there, and so I went up there with it, and Justin Dart had a coat off, and he had his sleeves rolled up. And then I remember he said, well, Aki, I guess it's you and I are the only guys that really work here, don't we? Look, no coats. Everybody, but he was real nice. And Mary Bryant was a very charming lady. She'd always say hello when she'd come into the corporation there. So that was kind of my experience there at Rexall Corporation. And at one point then, my brothers and I kind of were thinking about starting our own studio. And so we did. We thought, well, let's start an art studio, which we did. We opened it up in on Olympic, I believe it was Olympic Boulevard near Union, very close to the freeway there. And I remember it was the time that Bobby Kennedy had been killed at the Ambassador Hotel, and that following day we could see from our window, we could look over to the freeway looking east, and we could see the caravan with the police escort and the funeral car going. That I always remember that. It was a terrible day. Well, that's kind of that part of it. We did a lot of packaging for art directors from back east. They came out here for doing a cigarette campaign that they had, and so we did a lot of the packaging for all these art directors, and they stayed very close to us in a hotel room, and we entertained them and took them out to Hollywood and that type of thing, to different nightclubs, and so that was an interesting time. We went up to the Magic Castle at that time, which was a big experience for them, and did some nice entertaining.
Now, talk a little more about the